No risk of a copyright strike there. What's happening, party people? Welcome to Punchboard Party. My name is Daniel. This is Father Greg. We are working through the top 10 games on Board Game Geek, doing a deep dive into all the mechanisms, all the ways that it plays, talking to you about it, party people, and ultimately asking the question, do these games deserve to be as highly ranked as they are on Board Game Geek? And what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight we played through 2 games of Star Wars Rebellion.
Woo! Star Wars Rebellion.
Yeah.
This was something. Mm-hmm. This is like a good experience.
Yeah, I feel like talking about it, we both kind of put Star Wars. This was one of the games we were most interested to play in the top 10 of BGG that
100%.
We kind of looked at, and we were both most excited to kind of get this one to the table.
Now, if you've seen a few of these videos, you kind of know what we do. Go on to Board Game Geek, we find some user submissions and reviews, and we kind of bounce off of them because we don't want to just say the things we think about the game without having some backing that, like, other people think about this stuff too. And we might not be totally on our own island when we talk about some of this stuff.
Right.
So we're kind of joining the conversation on Board Game Geek. And we want you to join the conversation too, down in the comments below. So are you feeling like kicking us off?
Sure, yeah. Southern Fried GN, who rated this game a 9, and he said, if you like Star Wars, then you will like this game. It plays really smooth with really interesting mechanics. The asymmetrical nature feels really awesome. The theme is nailed to a T with all of your favorite Star Wars characters, ships, etc. It says 2 to 4, but it's only a 2-player game. Never play the 4-player game. This is a 2-player game. In all caps. Components and art are stunning as always with FFG. Such a stellar production. 9 out of 10.
Wow. Okay, I'm just going to jump in here with my 10 rating.
Yep.
Because I think it kind of goes hand in hand.
For sure.
So this is Brother Gideon, who says, one of the best gaming experiences that recreates the movie experience on a grand scale, and even lets you take the story in fun new directions. A favorite to play again and again. So this kind of hits those theme boxes and like the grandiose scale of this whole thing.
Yeah, so what do you think? If you like Star Wars, does this game just naturally appeal to you?
I think 100%. I think because like Star Wars fandom seems to be squarely in the original trilogy, like that.
Right.
That's the diehard fan base. The Mandalorian, these kinds of things that are coming out now really kind of cater to that audience, and this is that. This is the original kind of 3 movies in a box, streamlined down into whatever you can kind of muster up as one player playing the Empire, one player playing the Rebellion. And it does that really well. All the characters from those movies show up, all the events that happen on the cards and things, they are right from the movies.
Yeah, I think theme is an interesting one for me because I think some people, there are some of the negative critiques will be like, I don't see the theme in this game. Okay. I think some people maybe mean 2 different things by that.
Right.
I think for some people, theme is like the art, the names of the characters, like the ships, like the components that set you into the Star Wars universe. I think that definitely feels like Star Wars, right? And you see Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you see the Death Star, and you see like your Carulian cruisers, and you see like all your things. That kind of feels like Star Wars. But then there's like the actual like gameplay, like the actual sort of mechanics of the game, and like, does that make me feel like I'm in the game? Do I feel like... And I think for me, this game is thematic in that way too. Maybe to a little bit of a different degree, but it does have a nice sort of thematic feel to it in that the Imperial player is this big, hulking monstrosity that just has power coming out of its wazoo, and you just feel like, as the Rebel player, you're consistently just sort of like suffocated under like the weight of this Imperial Empire. But like you're maybe just barely managing to like kind of claw out, maybe establish a few like little outposts, some islands that they don't really care about. You're like putting, your little like starting some bases, maybe getting some resources from there. That kind of feeling, I think, the feeling that this game provides, for me is like what makes this game thematic more so than just like the art or the component quality.
I think you're 100% right. Like, anybody who says this game is not thematic in either way we're talking about right now hasn't played the game or is an idiot. Because this game oozes theme. So first off, right, you're in it. You're in Star Wars world. Everything just is Star Wars. And then the gameplay mechanism, just like from the Empire using these probe cards to find out where the Rebel base is. That is brilliant and just oozes this, like, we gotta find them. We gotta find those scum. We gotta get them. Like, it just has that. And amongst all sorts of other things you do in this game, it's incredibly thematic and just screams that sort of epic Star Wars. You started playing Star Wars music as we were playing the game, and like, yes, like this is this needs that kind of thing. It doesn't need it, but like it begs for it.
That's right.
I think this is a 10 out of 10 as far as capturing the feel of Star Wars. Okay, coming from Fence Jumper. Set aside the afternoon and love this. Such good back and forth. Although I believe it's slightly weighted to the Imperials.
So, yes, so we played this game twice, and we switched sides. So we each played once as the Empire and once as the Rebels. Now, I played as the Empire first, so when we were still learning the game, I think it's safe to say that, like,
You stomped me.
Yeah, it was over, relatively quickly.
Well, but I wouldn't say that.
I mean, the game still took a long time, but, like, it wasn't close.
So I didn't accomplish anything hardly as the Rebels.
Right.
I was just on my heels the whole time, trying to figure out how I was going to back this like mega force up. So that is like, it's a clearly unbalanced game the first time you play.
That's right.
The first time you play, if that's all you've played, you're going to evaluate the Empire as overpowered. You're going to say, no, it's totally unfair, totally unbalanced, it doesn't like make any sense. But that's not so.
Right, and you were saying that if I was ever to teach this to somebody new, I would give them the Empire and I would play the Rebels,
100%.
As a player who knew the game better.
Yeah. I need to flip over our chicken wings.
Yep, go for it.
Chicken, baby!
So, as you were saying, well, we did play it a second time, and so we switched it up, and it helped that now as the Rebels, I had the benefit of the experience of the first game.
And you had kind of looked into a little bit, like, some strategies of, like, what the Rebels could do to kind of even the playing field. I'm still willing to say that, like, I'm probably the worst player of the two of us, just generally speaking. So there might not be a perfect scientific experiment here. But we had an amazing knockout, beat him up, drag him out, like, right to the finish. Like, we went as... Like, we took each other to the limit as far as each kind of side could go in our gameplay of this.
And so, it's like in our second game, the Rebels won. Like, I won as the Rebels, but it was right down to the end. I definitely would agree that, like, I think the Imperial player is at least... It's more immediately evident what the Imperial player is supposed to do, which is to find the Rebel base and destroy it, which it kind of... They can kind of lean into it because they've got a ton of troops and they've got, a lot of things that, like, help them to kind of ease into that objective. The Rebel player is just a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit more like shadowy. You're kind of like you're kind of hiding and you're kind of staying out of trouble, kind of fighting the battles that you really need to fight. Like you need to destroy a Star Destroyer. So you're like, okay, wait till he abandons but then when you know that, like as the Empire player, you know that card exists in future plays. You're like, well, I don't want to leave my Star Destroyer just alone, sitting alone in the middle of a galaxy. I should protect all my Star Destroyers with, lots of other fighters around them. And
it's a pretty counterintuitive experience as a Rebel player because your objectives that you're trying to accomplish in order to get to the end game, kind of rush the end game, is basically what you're trying to do as the Rebels. In order to complete your objectives, you kind of have to be offensive most of the time.
Right.
When you're playing a defensive game as the Rebels. So it can kind of catch you off guard first time playing. I found that difficult to try and figure out how to be offensive while I'm like severely overpowered. Not overpowered, outpowered. So it's an interesting puzzle to figure out that way. All I want to say though is that I think this is far more balanced than people are giving it credit for. It just will take a little bit of learning.
That's right. I think you need to understand what the Rebel player does. Like, the Rebel player has to kind of, like, at times overextend and at times just, like, turtle in and just, like, kind of just run from every battle and retreat and just, like, kind of let the Empire, like... For a long time, I was trying to build a Mon Calamari cruiser, and every single time he would just like overtake those planets that produce those ships, and I was just like so angry that I could not produce these damn ships. You're gonna burn for this. This is awful. I hate your guts.
I don't know. I'm having a good time. Yeah.
But like. You have to be kind of okay with that as the Rebel. You have to be like, I can't compete with that level of strength, right? In that way, at least.
So you hate to have to say this a little bit, but also why not? If you're playing this for the first time, you just do yourself a huge favor by going onto the Board Game Geek forums and looking up how to play as each side and like strategy tips and stuff. And so going in with a bit more knowledge than the rulebook provides would just get you over that initial hurdle of the first play kind of being a wash, because we'll talk about later, I'm sure, but like these are long games, and so you don't want to necessarily, although it wasn't the worst, fumbling through the first game.
Cool. So going on to I went on a board game forum and asked what the completely average rating for a game was, and apparently across all users across all games it's like 7.146 or something like that. So this is like a 7. So it's a thoroughly kind of average review. But he says this, Honor in Defeat says, never before has a game so quickly descended into a series of FUs. He says, I like...
He didn't say F, did he?
No, but I chose to, censor that part out. But, he says, I like the asymmetric gameplay. The Empire is a military power where the rebels are more on the diplomatic side. Things are tipped slightly in favor of the Empire, who can curb stomp anyone who doesn't think a few steps ahead. The only thing I dislike is the boring combat, but a good player can minimize that. And so there is this kind of... this is a two-player game. And as a two-player game, especially, we were talking a little bit about this. Is this a war game? It's kind of a war game. I think that's a fair kind of description of what this is. And so you're attacking the other player. And especially your cards, the kind of missions that you play at the start, there's a lot of, like, take that.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of, I'm going to do this to hurt you. I'm going to capture your leader. Well, I'm going to destroy the ships you have in your building queue. Well, I'm going to take over the loyalty of this region. Well, I'm going to go and, blow up your Death Star, whatever. Like, there's all these kind of different things. So I think, for sure, there was times, I think, in both of our plays, certainly maybe more as the Rebels, because you feel like you're...
Each of us had a moment as the Rebels where, like, genuine hurt. Like just kind of like, this is not fun and not okay, and like almost like, how could you do this to me?
That's right.
Aren't we friends?
That's right.
But it's just the nature of the play. It cuts a little deeper than I anticipated when you're in a situation where you're like, okay, I just need a third loyalty marker out in this system, and on the system in this region, and everything will be okay. And then Father Greg comes along and just goes, remove 2 loyalty things from this region, and it's just like, haven't even gotten one stinking objective fulfilled, and he's already taken it, right? And then I'm doing similar things to him the next time we play. Just taking away all his ability to make his Mon Calamari cruisers, right?
That's right.
But like, if you don't expect this to be a take that style war game, like what are you expecting? What else do you think a game about blowing up ships, like a game called Star Wars, what do you think that's going to be? So it's like, I don't know if it's realistic to expect anything other than. One thing that I do think this kind of a frustrating dimension of the fact that this is a series of kind of take that stuff is on the flip side, when you're trying to accomplish a mission, the other player always has the opportunity to kind of cancel out your mission. They can put a leader in play in that system and roll some dice, and if they get more kind of hit hits than you, then you don't get to do that action.
Right.
That can be a little bit, because like you expect I'm going to do crazy things to you, you're going to do crazy things to me. But to kind of plan to do something crazy to another player after they've done something crazy to you successfully, and then for yours not to be successful, that's a bit of a bummer. That's a bit of a raw deal. I don't mind that so much because of the way that these mechanics work. This game is mechanically sound. I'll talk about that in just a sec. But like, there's reasons why I don't mind that so much. But I can see why people would.
So yeah, like this is not like just a Euro game where you're just like kind of playing your own sort of strategy and just sort of like, you know, like there is a heavy deal of confrontation. And so I could see someone who's like really worried about like offending another player or like really, you know, trying to be like, wow, that seems a little mean. Maybe I won't do that. It's like you kind of have to. Yeah. Like you have to be, you know, especially if you're Barbie, you have to be jerks. Like you have to, that's kind of the role you're taking on.
So in this world that we're talking about, comes a comment from DeathCloud9. A bit of a game of keep away hot potato. This is a 6 rating, by the way. A lot around the timing of the active leaders, which for me feel like action selection workers. If you know the whole deck, perhaps that gives more strategic depth, but it felt very opportunistic. Thematically, I may just be more interested in learning in real life history. Mechanically, I may be more interested in more choices rather than being slowly cut off from them. That's what makes 4X fun, is having a buildup of forces. The objective cards in this felt pretty improbable and not very interesting dynamic. There's very little push-pull on the timer. Okay, so this is kind of a middle-of-the-road review. They don't like some certain things, but they mention something that I think is incredible about this game. And that is this kind of action selection, worker placement style that the game kind of brings into the fold. Where the main core mechanism is that you have these leaders and you associate them with these mission cards that you play. And you pair up a mission card with a leader.
Right.
And they have to have a matching symbol as what the card requires them to play. And a certain number of that symbol for certain cards to be played as well. And so you kind of play the card and the leader out on the board and you do your thing. And this adds just enough of kind of a Euro style game mechanism for me to just be hooked. Where I'm just like, okay, I get this. This is Eurogame. This is, I'm selecting my action. I'm placing my worker to do that action. I have to have a certain amount of resources, the symbols on your leader, to do this particular action. And then there's this added level of, in order to be successful in this action, I'm going to have to make sure that I have more symbols that this action requires than my opponent can put into play. And so I'm looking at your board. Do you have any leaders in reserve not being put to your own missions later on? If you're kind of loaded up on your mission cards with your leaders, then maybe I'm gonna be like, okay, I don't have to worry so much. I can just kind of do these things free and clear. I really like this mechanism. I think this is the heartbeat for me of this game.
It's interesting. I don't know that I have ever come away with this thinking that was kind of like, oh, there's some Euro game elements to this.
Oh, really?
I would have just been
loud
like,
and clear for me.
This is just a war game. I'm moving my ships in. I'm rolling some dice, and I don't mind that. You know, it's funny when we were doing our top 100 games, somebody in the comments had said like, oh, I see, this is like the top 100 Euro games. Like,
medium weight
Euros.
Like, top 100 medium weight Euros.
Yeah, like that's basically what you guys play. And I was like, yeah, that's fair as a general rule. But like, I do enjoy something of like, you know what? I enjoy just running in with a bunch of troops and just rolling a bunch of dice. That I can really get into a game that is just a kind of great storytelling game. And that's what this game does, right? It's just, you move a bunch of ships in, you roll a bunch of dice, sometimes the combat goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. I'm fine with that. Like, I think the card play is interesting. I don't know that it's ever reminded me of like, oh, this is like a Euro strategy game. I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to try to get 4 spots in a region and see if he notices, you know, and if he doesn't, oh baby, I'm going to be able to, you know, fulfill this objective card. But so for me, it's like the story element is far and away what kind of what makes this game feel like a great game, rather than like the mechanics of the game are fine.
Yeah. See, so we're just coming at an enjoyment of this game from different angles, and I think like I don't disagree with you that it's very heavy in just theme and in narrative and in not narrative, but like heavy in just like Ameritrash. It's an Ameritrash game. I'm not trying to argue that this is a Euro game. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's a core Euro mechanism that makes someone like me feel at home in a world I normally wouldn't feel at home in. Mm-hmm. And so I just really enjoy that dimension. Okay, so one last comment to go through. This is from Jedi Skills. So they're going to love this. Yep. They're going to love this. It's a 4.
Oh, wow.
A game specifically made for dedicated Star Wars fans. Otherwise, you are looking at a big mess. After the somewhat painful setup, you have action cards, mission cards, objective cards, tactic cards, and project cards. I have a large table, and this takes up most of it. The combat, which should be fun and exciting, is actually the opposite, as is one of the worst combat resolution systems. Aside from the fact that the rebel units are crap, it revolves around rolling dice and playing tactics cards. This is a game with a lot to do, but there is nothing that particularly stands out in terms of mechanism. So, Father Greg, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. The first is not necessarily the weight of this game, but the investment that this game takes up, the time investment, the investment in the rules. Like I read the rule book, I listened to watch videos of this game, and even on the second play, I was still learning new rules. I'm flipping through the rule book, I'm like, oh, well that's interesting. I didn't know you could do that. Right. That's an interesting rule. So the rules, there's a pretty heavy kind of rules overhead that you have to get through, and then just the game time. The first game, I remember how long it took.
It was 3 hours first play,
right? And that was the one where I kind of squashed you, but when it was really close, it took us
4.5.
It took us significantly longer, and could have even been longer than that.
Yeah,
if it was a really sort of back and forth tight game, you can kind of see how this game could take a while to sort of play out. And so
now this is a length that you don't feel. In gameplay, at least we didn't.
That's right. I was always intrigued by it.
But you notice, you're just looking at the clock because you're curious, and you're like, oh dear, dear. I got to bed at 3 a.m. I had to wake up with my kids. Anyway, it was a bit much, but it engages you the whole time. But this is my only real complaint about the game. A little bit that some of the moves that when you're the rebels that happen to you are a little stingy, they hurt. Right. But otherwise, it's just, yes, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to set up. There's a lot to kind of figure out. It's just a big game. But this is always going to be my complaint about these bigger games on the top 10 on Board Game Geek. It's a bit of an investment, and you have to kind of really want to get this played. And so, but when you do, it's worth it, man.
Right. Kind of like Arkham Horror, where you were like, I'll bring this game out every Halloween or something. Yes. That would be kind of the same thing I would feel
May
this
the 4th.
game. Yeah, exactly. It's okay, sure, on May the 4th, I'll get my Star Wars friends together, or one of them, and I'll play a game of Star Wars Rebellion, and then this game will go back on the shelf and it will sit there for the rest of the year, because this is just not a game that's going to see the table that much.
Now, the second part of this comment has to do with the combat. And so this is kind of far and above the most negative comment on the Board Game Geek threads about this game. It's just that the combat is lame, the combat is stupid, the combat sucks, the combat. And so we wanted to talk about this. Now, typically, at the end of this video, we talk about what games are like this game or what you should play. And we thought that for this time around, we would kind of take the angle of, if you like the sound of this game, but the combat sounds lame, or you played this game and the combat was, what other games can you play where you might find the combat more satisfying? So first off, just give us a kind of quick hot take on why this combat sucks.
Yeah, so the combat's interesting because the combat, so there's two theaters. You're in space, and then you have to fight on land. Yeah. And you have to keep rotating between these two. And on your turn, even if you're rolling a whole fleet of dice, even if you're rolling all 10 of your dice, which is the maximum dice you can roll, you might do 3 hits. And if you're in a big space battle, that means 1 or 2 ships have disappeared. And then you have to go and fight on the land, and maybe 1 stormtrooper goes away. And then you come back to the sky and you fight out, and maybe now you finally get rid of one of the bigger ships. Maybe you get rid of a Star Destroyer, and then it's back. So it can take a while to kind of resolve. And then there's always going to be people, I think the kind of Eurogamers in the group, who resent resolving a battle just by rolling dice. There's going to be some people for whom that is just infuriating. This is just stupid. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And so for me, there's like a few like different games that do this combat mechanism in those different ways. We were talking about like, I think if you really like strategic combat, if you like a combat where you're as the smarter player maybe, or the player who's like placed more forethought into the battle is going to come out. Something like we played a game of Cry Havoc a long time ago.
Yes.
That had like kind of like Rising Sun is another sort of similar game where you have to kind of like go into battle and you have to sort of like place bets on sort of how the battle's going to end up and place bets on like different actions that you want to do sort of in the course of the battle. So I think something like that, or like even something like Inish where you're kind of, the battle is resolved by kind of card play. There's not really dice, but you're like discarding cards and using different card effects to remove different guys from the map.
Yeah, so one game that really stood out to me was Rex, The Final Days of the Empire. So this was a Twilight Imperium spin-off that was a Dune reboot. They didn't have the rights for Dune at the time. And this was, your typical, you had dudes in the map, you were trying to control territories. It was straight up kind of a lot of similar feels here, but it had some cool ways of doing this. And I really enjoyed the way that they resolved battles because you had your own kind of personal dial where you could kind of turn this dial to the number of troops that you were going to put into this battle. So then you were going to secretly kind of decide what you're going to do. And then you were actually there was a spot on your dial where you put this little card. And the card was going to affect your bet as well. So it would either add some sort of effect to your troops, or it would like add more troops. I thought that was brilliant. So I think that was really good. I really like Cry Havoc.
I don't mind. I like rolling dice for combat, and so the only problem with Star Wars Rebellion is just it's slow in the combat. So, but something like any of like the Academy Game series, like 878 or 1775 or 1812 or any of those like, where like the combats are over pretty quickly because you're just rolling a bunch of dice and you're dealing like immediate damage. Some of your guys are like running away. It's like you do like 3 rolls and the whole like battle is ended, even if it's like a major, huge battle. Like generally speaking, it doesn't take that long. So even something like that, even if it was just like leaning into the luck, but just like, we're just going to roll a bunch of battles and just kind of see what happens.
Right.
I'd be fine with that too.
Yeah, so Star Wars Rebellion for the combat does pick kind of a weird middle ground where it's fairly luck dependent and it's kind of that thing of the thrill of the dice chuck and like, maybe I can make it out alive, yay. But then at the same time, it also puts this kind of 2-tiered battle system in place. You're drawing tactics cards each of those times, depending on the leader you have in the battle. So it just kind of populates what could be a simple just dice chuck, let's see who wins. And it populates it with a bit more bloat. And I can see that criticism. For me, it didn't matter. It was exciting. It was fun. It was good. I'd take the battles any way they came.
Right.
It was all about the lead in and the lead out of these battles for me.
Yeah, for me that would be really the game length and the combat would be the two kind of downsides. Those would be the two things that would take this game maybe out of maybe my top 100. Maybe it might be in the bottom of it, but
yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. One day we'll see.
That's right.
So, Father Greg, talk to me about Star Wars Rebellion. It's coming in at 7 right now, I think.
Right. Yes.
I'm hesitant to say now because people are get all up in arms about this, but 7 right now in the rankings on Board Game Geek. Final thoughts. What are you thinking about where it sits? Does it deserve its spot? Are you content with that?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think you're probably right to say I play a lot of kind of Euro games, but this would be something that I'm always happy to have some kind of a big, sprawling combat game. I don't know if this is my sprawling combat game of choice. Like, I might prefer Blood Rage or something like Rising Sun or something like, or even just another war game to this, but it's definitely in the contention for it. It's definitely a game that I'll look back on with pleasant memories and be like, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed our play of it. It was a solid play. It would be for me like a high 8, maybe a low 9.
So for me, this definitely deserves a spot on the Board Game Geek Top 10. I think this is a game that everyone should try and get their hands on and play. Book your calendar for a bit of a hefty experience. You got to put the investment to learn it and get it to the table, but it brings something special where you're not going to get many 2-player experiences in a theme that is as inviting and attractive as this is. There's a lot of 2-player war games out there that like GMT or publishers like that come out with, but that's kind of a step above, for some gamers.
Right, or there's a lot of 2-player games that are really small, like little 2-player
really
games
small.
that can fit in your pocket.
But this is nice. This kind of has some accessibility because of the theme. It's fun. It's engaging. It's a great 2-player experience, an epic experience. And so I think this squarely deserves, and when I say this, it doesn't mean that it's my number 7 game of all time, but I just say yes. You deserve to be there. I don't know where I'm going to rank it personally because of the factors of how it might be hard to get to the table and things like this, but I think it is a square. As I'm reviewing this, I'm like, oh yes, yeah, high 8, low 9. I think that's good. I think that really sums up my thoughts on this. Really enjoyed Star Wars Rebellion. Really think this is a great game. Party people, what do you think about Star Wars Rebellion? Let us know down in the comments down below. Are you eager to play this? Have you played this? What do you think? We got a lot of interaction around Spirit Island. People were kind of putting me in my place about some of my thoughts on Spirit Island. I hope the Star Wars Rebellion fans.
Don't be bullied by those comments, man. Stay strong, man. You can hate Spirit Island, even if everyone else hates you. It's fine.
And I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue hating Spirit Island. Don't worry. But I'm just saying, I hope that I've gained some friends over the friends I might have lost over Spirit Island. I hope I've gained some friends over Star Wars Rebellion. That's all I'm saying. So, party people, we're keeping this list going. We got some other games. I don't know.
Right.
We got some other games coming down the pipe.
Ark Nova just came into the top 10, so maybe we'll get that played.
We're gonna get that played. I'm excited for that. So I'm excited for Ark Nova. I'm excited to play a little bit more Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I think we can review that pretty soon. Well, I think we're pretty close to getting our feels around that. And but then we still got some, Guy Project I'm really looking forward to. This list, this release schedule for this list might start slowing down a little bit. We might have to bring you some other content in between. But we'll see. So, party people, love sharing love and joy of board games with you. And until next time,
may the Force be with you.